Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, and I decided to do a drop-in support group meeting today just to see if anybody's suffering, anybody needs any help with their IC. Now, my purpose with these meetings is to help patients learn as much as they can about IC so that you can be strong, powerful, informed, so that you can control your medical care, so that you can work effectively with your doctor, so that you can deal with anybody who has the audacity to suggest that your IC is not real or treatable. I want you to be as empowered as you can possibly be. And that is the purpose of our meetings. Now, we do meetings twice a month, two scheduled meetings twice a month, the first Sunday and the third Sunday of the month at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I also do drop-in meetings, and we are simulcasting right now on Facebook up top, YouTube down there. Hello, everybody. Hi, Monica. Hi, Karine. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Alexis. How are you guys doing today? I hope you're having a really good day today. I want you guys to remember that I'm not a doctor. I cannot give you medical advice. If there's anything that I say that you find interesting, I want you to research it. You can come on over to our website, talk with your doctor about it, et cetera, et cetera. If there's one thing that we really want to do is we want patients to stop relying on social networking for their medical care. If there's something that I suggest to you that's interesting, I need you to do your due diligence and research it. And you can Google it. You can go to the National Library of Medicine. You can come to our website, all right? But I don't want you to just believe me just because I'm a person. You know, come on, do your due diligence. Let's build that knowledge level here. Now, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsor for 2019. We have a sponsor for our online support series, and that is Preleaf. So I want to say thank you very, very much to DSC Healthcare Solutions and Preleaf, who believe that patients deserve support and they're going to make it happen. This is their new product. It's called Preleaf Sterins. You know, Preleaf reduces the acid level of foods that you might be eating. So if you are going to go out to a restaurant or you go to a family member's house and they're fixing something that you would not normally eat because you're worried that it might irritate your bladder, you could do something like Preleaf before you eat that would help minimize the effect of the acid. So Preleaf comes in Sterins, which is a powder. You pour it into a cup, or it comes in pills. We used to have Sterins. They used to call, what did they call it back then? This is, even though this is a new launch, gosh, back 20 years ago, AK Pharma, who developed Preleaf in the first place, they originally had a Sterin formula too, but they called it something, I don't remember what they called it. Darn it, darn it, darn it. Anyway, so if you haven't heard of Preleaf before, please think about it. All right, now, whoops. I do these meetings in 3 sections. I do a little educational content first for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to take your questions. I'm happy to take every question you have. I'm willing to go 2 hours. That's what we normally do. Sometimes we have giveaways. And so I'm going to dive right into my content here, but I do want to say one thing. If you have been a member of the IC network and have used our support forum, then you know my staff member, ICN Donna. IC Donna. Donna has managed we've only had 2 women who have managed the support center in the last 25 years. We had Diane Manhattan, and then Diane Manhattan was tragically taken from us. She was a victim of a violent crime. And then Donna stepped in 15 years ago and took her place. And Donna is one of the kindest, sweetest, most loving women you could ever meet. And tragically, she lost her husband last weekend. And if you go to our forum, there's an area where you can offer her your condolences, or if you would like to send her an email, if she has touched you and helped you in some way. I'm trying to surround her with love and support because she was with her husband for 47 years. He was 99 years old when he passed away. So you can email her, and I would love it if you could email her your condolences to donna@ic-network.com. Donna@ic-network.com. Alrighty. So, and I talked to Donna yesterday. She's doing okay. But as you know, it's just a terrible, terrible thing to go through. All right. So hello, YouTube. Yes, we got a couple people on YouTube now. Happy to see you. You know, I had to run to the store this morning because our newspaper was sopping wet, and I wanted to get my elderly parents their newspaper in the morning. I walk in, and it's this Valentine's Day hell, right? I mean, there's flowers everywhere. There's chocolate-covered strawberries everywhere. There's balloons everywhere. And kind of dawned on me, oh, look, it's Valentine's Day. And I'm not quite a fan of Valentine's Day because I broke up with my fiance on Valentine's Day several years ago. And so I tend to be somebody who looks at Valentine's Day a little bit differently. Not the best memories in the world for me personally. But I wanted to talk about it today because it's something that comes up every single year. How do you celebrate Valentine's Day if you've got a painful bladder? How do you celebrate Valentine's Day if you cannot have sex? How do you celebrate Valentine's Day when you feel unlovable and unworthy? And if you've watched these support groups before, I mean, I'm going to pound it into you over and over and over again. Having IC or pelvic pain or bladder pain or prostatitis or irritable, whatever, does not make you a lesser person. It does not make you unlovable. It does not change your heart. It does not change your soul. It does not change your ability to be with and love the people around you. I don't want you doing what we all do at some point in time, myself included, where you start thinking you're damaged goods and you're unworthy. That is simply not true. And if your partner was hit by a car and could not enjoy Valentine's Day or do Valentine's Day or have sex on Valentine's Day or wanted to stay in bed on Valentine's Day, would you love them less? Of course not, because they are hurt. And if you are the IC patient, you are the hurt person. So I rewrote my column on Valentine's Day last week, and I want to share it with you today. It is right now posted on the IC Network website, on the front page of our website. You can go over and look at it. But I just want to read portions of it for you. It's not that long, but I think it'll really help. And I want to talk specifically about how to approach sex, and especially when you cannot have sex. Okay, so I apologize in advance if this offends anyone, but we do on occasion need to talk about intimacy and how IC can impact that. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm very direct about the issues that we struggle with. I believe that IC can strengthen rather than weaken our relationships if we face issues head on. We can't hide from the fact that there are times when we might be feeling unwell, nor should we hide from how IC can influence how we live. But on special days like Valentine's Day, there can be preconceived notions and expectations that could rob us of the love that we so richly deserve. Please remember that IC cannot change your heart nor the love that you can give to others and your family. Love is so much more than just sex. It is a daily expression of kindness and caring as well. Okay, so that's my little intro. Now, if there's one thing that's expected to generate performance anxiety, it's going to be a Valentine's Day. Some people think that Valentine's Day is supposed to be a big, emotional, and physical expression of love and adoration. Others resent the over-commercialization of the holiday or expectations that their lovers may have of them. Still, others have what I call Valentine's Day PTSD, where in the past we may have been so hurt and disappointed by a previous Valentine's Day, they simply cannot enjoy the day fully. Yeah, you tried breaking up with your fiance on Valentine's Day. Exactly. Yet, regardless of where you stand on the holiday, it is important to remember that the spirit of the holiday is to express your love with your partner and your friends and to say, I'm glad that you're in my life. The monkey in the room is clearly sex. It's no secret that intimacy can be uncomfortable for some patients, particularly if you're in a flare. How a couple handles those moments when one person wants to have sex and the other doesn't or can't is a true sign of their maturity and strength. After all, we're really not going to expect someone to have wild, passionate, athletic sex when they have a broken hip, and neither should we expect the same from someone having serious pelvic pain. So, question number one, to do it or not to do it? If your IC is in remission and you're feeling good, then by all means, enjoy intimacy. You can find several tips and suggestions that will make sex more comfortable and enjoyable right on our website in the IC Network Romance and Intimacy Center. Now see, there's a section I took out. There's a section I took out, and I might talk about it later. Okay. If you're feeling uncomfortable and not prepared to have intercourse, that doesn't mean that you can't express your love with your partner in different ways. You might consider pleasuring your partner or trying some tantric sex, also known as outercourse. Some couples use toys like the tenga for those moments when penetration isn't possible. A woman can simply hold the toy between her legs or in her hands. It sounds weird? It really isn't. I see couples love this sex toy because it's playful, fun, and very satisfying. Then if you're in a serious flare and feeling quite poorly, then of course, intimacy is out, but don't you both still deserve the warmth of a hug, a warm shoulder, and just the presence of someone you care for? How about finding a favorite movie on TV or some icy-friendly snacks? Or just cuddling on the sofa or in front of a roaring fire for a few hours? However, it's very important that whenever you say no to sex, you say yes for love. If you're the IC patient and saying no to sex, you have to understand that your partner could be hurt by your rejection. And of course, that's the entire point here. This is not a rejection of their love or of your relationship. You have to work hard to make sure that you communicate that clearly with your partner. It's all about how you talk to each other. You might consider saying, "Tonight, my love, my bladder is very tender. I'd like to wait until I'm feeling better so that we can both enjoy this moment." So I'm not saying no to you as a man or a husband because I love you deeply and passionately. I'm just saying that right now my body is too fragile. Follow that up with hugs and kisses. Express yourself clearly, look deeply in their eyes and say, "I see cannot change my love for you. I love you very much." And if you're the partner of someone with IC, try to remember that they feel very insecure and vulnerable. Don't push them when they aren't feeling well. But of course, that's often the hardest part because you might not know how they feel. So when in doubt, ask them, "Honey, how do you feel today? Is there anything that I can do? Can I give you a shoulder massage, a heating pad, a foot rub? Can I make dinner?" Of course, there are times when the person who is ill just might need quiet time and sleep. And if that happens on Valentine's, then let it be. Like Christmas, Valentine's Day is just one day in our lives, and there will be many others where you can express your love. Okay, so that's what I wrote. Now let's talk the meat of the issue here, people. Let me fix my computer here. Hold on. One of the things that happens in partnerships with IC, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, whatever, it's all about communication. I want to say this the right way. I want to tell you the story of two patients in my support group. Chuck and Joe. And they're now gone. So this is not violating. Anybody in our group was there. So this is okay for me to tell this story. So this was at our Christmas party. We had a Christmas party scheduled. I had a video that was showing. Right before it all began, they got in a big fight in the middle of the support group meeting. And Joanne started saying, "You don't love me. Why don't you love me anymore? You won't even touch me." And Chuck, who I knew them both very, very well, was stunned. And he said, "But honey, I don't want to hurt you. And when I try to hug you, you push me away. So I don't know when to approach you. I have no clue." And then she said, "Well, you should just know. You should just know I need a hug." And he said, "But I don't know when you need a hug. I have no clue when you need a hug because you're not telling me anything." And then I kind of, I'm in there and I'm like moderating it and doing a really good job, I think, of making sure people aren't hurt in the end. And what I said to Joanne, I said, "Now listen, Joe, do you expect him to read your mind?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Now, how fair is that? That's not fair. He cannot read your mind. You have to tell him when you need a hug. That's not fair to him that you expect him to guess. And you are expecting him to guess. And that's a lose-lose for all of you." And she, and she's a sweet, wonderful lady before she died. She was, she was like, "Oh my God, you're right. You're absolutely right. I have given him nothing. I have given him no clue on how I'm feeling." And here's Chuck, who at this point in time is crying. He loves his wife desperately. And he's shattered that she thinks that he doesn't love her. He's just afraid of hurting her. Very, very afraid of hurting her. So the end result was, it was an incredible teaching moment for my support group. And we all learned that whether you're the spouse or the patient with IC, y'all got to talk to each other well and clearly. But you have to make sure, if you're the IC patient, that when you say no to something, that you are not questioning love. If your partner comes to you and wants to have sex and you just cannot do it, it's like, "No way in hell, I will not be touched today." Please don't say that to them. What you're going to say is, "Hon, I love you so much. You are my partner. You are my soulmate. I cannot begin to tell you how important you are in my life. Right now, at this moment, my bladder can't do it. My pelvis cannot do it. It just can't. But that doesn't mean that I don't love you. I love you more today than I have ever loved you before." Right? So Valentine's Day is a hot button for IC patients because there's all these expectations. God forbid your partner bring you chocolate and chocolate flares you. What are you going to do? Throw it across the room and yell at him? You better not. You better not. What you're going to say is, "Thank you so much, honey. I love you so much." And then you're going to put them to the side and let him enjoy them, or let your partner enjoy them, or let your children enjoy them, or let a friend enjoy them. It's really interesting. There was a research study years ago that talked about spousal support. And it proved that patients who had spousal support had a better outcome than patients who didn't. Now, some of you have faced a partner who is left, right? Because they can't cope with it. And you're thinking, actually, I have a friend whose husband broke his neck and she left him. I was stunned. And it was because he was doing something that she didn't agree with. Like, so I don't want, gosh, I want to say this the right way, damn it. The true test of a relationship is how you handle it when one person is sick and one person isn't. You know, gosh, let me just, when you're young and you're both healthy, sex is great. And it's very quick, right? It's usually kind of a slam bam, thank you, ma'am kind of situation. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, sex changes a little bit. It becomes more about time. It becomes about affection. There's a little bit more richness to it. That it isn't, you learn that love isn't just about sex. It's about being with each other. It's about hugging each other. It's about hanging out in bed and watching a movie. It's spending time with each other. And if sex is part of that, that's great. But it doesn't have to be. There's more to that. Then as you get older, you get your 40s, because you're physically changing, sex changes too. And that happens as we get older, from your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. I've worked with 80-year-olds who are still intimate with their husbands. But when you're 80, you're not going to be able to do 2 hours worth of spectacular sex. With you, when you're 80, you're going for the soft, gentle, get you where you want to go. And then there's lots of hugging and loving. And so what you find when you're younger, it's all about the quick sex. And as you get older, it's about the affection and the love. And if sex is part of that, that's great. The older you get, the more affection there is, right? Okay, so that's the normal way the sexual relationship progresses. As we get older and our bodies change, sex changes, right? It does. Gosh, something else just flitted right through my brain that I wanted to say right there. Here it is. There comes a time in every relationship where your relationship is tested because one of you wants to have sex and the other doesn't. When you're a kid, you fight about it. When you're a kid, you're pushy. When you're a kid, you're mean. People can be mean because you don't know what it's like to be hurt. And if you're blessed, you won't be hurt for many, many years. But there are some people out there who get hurt in high school, in college, in their 20s or their 30s. And how you come together as a couple over those moments is a true test of your maturity, an absolute test of your maturity. For the person who wants to have sex and the other person who can't, the person who wants to have sex should give them a hug and say, all right, honey, I can take care of this. And the person who cannot have sex is a person who gives them a hug and says, I love you so much. If I could do it, I would do it right now. It hurts too much. But what do you do? What do you do for those moments when, let's take the person, the patient I was working with who had HPV-driven urethral cancer. and they had to remove her urethra, and they had to remove her bladder, and they had to remove her vagina and her uterus and her ovaries, because she had and she was young. She was in her 30s, all from HPV. Okay. Can she have sex normally? No, she can't. So what do? Number one, you learn about outer course. Outer course. You know what outer course is? It's called tantric sex. Now I'll tell you another story from my support group. So remember, I ran the Northern California IC support group for 15 years, and I'm still the Northern California support group leader. We just don't meet. We don't meet in person. We do it all online. So Evelyn, who was one of my co-leaders, knew a doctor down at the UC San Francisco Medical School who specialized in sex. So we asked him to come to our support group meeting. And so we were going to do something on sex. And in walked Santa Claus. It was hysterical. I hadn't met him. This is down at Petaluma Valley Hospital. The doctor walks in, and I'm not kidding you. The guy looks like Santa Claus. I look at her. She looks at me, and we're like, Santa Claus is going to talk about sex to our group? Okay. He was awesome. Oh my God. So the first thing he said is, never, ever, ever ask a doctor about sex advice. We're like, why? He goes, think about it. They're on call. They're working 6, 7 days, 4 or 5, whatever. Their schedule is so freaking insane. They don't have a normal sex life. They're farther from the truth. So take my word for it. I educate these doctors in the medical school. Please don't ask your doctor for sex advice, because the odds are he or she probably doesn't have a normal sex life anyway, which was hysterical. We were rolling. He was so funny about it. But then he told the story of one of his patients, as he was trying to make the point of what do couples do if one can't have traditional intercourse. So he told the story of this couple. He said, this couple came to me because they wanted to make sure their relationship was healthy. And I have to tell you, I envied them. I have never seen a couple so in love and so happy. And after a while, I just said, why are you coming to me? You're incredible. You have a life that most people would envy. And they were very, very committed to building their relationship and staying strong. And he said, but there's something you needed to know. He was in the war. And we're as a group going, okay. He goes, no. He was hurt in the war. And we're like, okay. He goes, no. He lost his penis from a landmine. And we're like, and he goes, how can a man without a penis have a sex life that other people envy? That was his question. How can a man without a penis have a sex life that other men envy? And the answer is that they were masters at outer course, not intercourse, outer course. So what is outer course? Outer course means that you touch and love and stroke and nibble and whatever things outside of the body. You know what I mean? And your goal is to get your partner through touching and stroking and loving to that point right before orgasm. And you know how good that feels, right? And in normal sex, man, if you could stay there for 2 minutes, whoo, that's incredible, right? Because it feels so good, and then orgasm happens and you're done. In tantric sex, in outer course, it's about getting your partner to that point and then keeping them there for an hour. An hour. By gentle touching, loving, stroking, whatever. Again, there's no intercourse. And he said, you know what? If orgasm happens, great. And if orgasm doesn't happen, I can promise you, both will be so happy and pleasured with each other, and you will have so much comfort and love from each other, this real affection, that it will be wonderful. Right. Okay. So you got to understand the context here. So here in this support group, there was like 25 people, most couples. I had young couples. I had a couple in their late 70s. All sorts of couples who were just like scribbling notes, kind of looking at each other going, okay, this is interesting. And he gave them very direct tips on things that they could do to pleasure each other when intercourse was not possible. And he sent them on their merry way. And if you could have seen them walking out the door, they were so cute, because they were just like, blushing and talking to each other and kind of going, yeah, we should try that. Let's try that. A month later, we come back to the meeting and they all come back. And I am not lying. They are glowing. And the couple that was glowing the most was the oldest couple. And they just volunteered. They said, could somebody at least taught us that in our 20s? If they had taught us that in our 20s, our sex lives would have been completely different. Completely different. Okay? So that is a true story. How can a man without a penis have a sex life that other men envy? And that is because they master outer course. Now, the other thing that I think is worth talking about is, in fact, pleasuring your partner even if you cannot have sex. Because intimacy is important. Think about what happens when you have sex. There is a wonderful relaxation afterwards. It is so good at relaxing muscles. You feel so good afterwards. So just because you can't have sex, does that mean your partner should not have sex? And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. I think that there are things that you can do, like outer course, that does not involve penetration, or you can pleasure your partner as a, God, I don't want to say as a gift, because come on, you love each other. We're doing it in many, many different ways, whether it's fixing their favorite food, whether it's going, to a movie that they want to do, or whether it's gardening, or whether it's doing chores or whatever. Pleasuring your partner is the miracle of a relationship, physically, mentally, emotionally, and intimately. And so if you're a woman or man and you cannot have penetration, there are toys that you can get that will do that for you. You can get a Tenga. Imagine the aerospace industry meeting the computer industry. The Tenga is one of the most popular sex toys for men around the world. Or you can get a fleshlight, which looks like a flashlight. You can have it on your bedside table. You have no clue that it's a sex toy, but it's something that your partner can thrust into, that you can put between your legs or you can hold or whatever. And so there's also a place for that, right? And it's hard, because some people are kind of raised with this notion that you're not supposed to explore during intimacy or try different things, or missionary is the only way to go, or toys are dirty, or whatever. We're not kids anymore. And sometimes you have to let go of preconceived notions to move on to the next stage of your relationship, because I can promise you, if you're together at 80, slam bam, thank you, ma'am, isn't going to happen. Soft, gentle sex is possibly going to happen. So it's all about adapting to the situation and to the circumstance. And so for this Valentine's Day, I want you to not have, gosh, oh my God, I don't even know how to say this. I broke up with a man that I loved out of preconceived notions. I expected what he could not deliver. I expected a a big Valentine's. I expected a big gift. Not a, you know, I mean, I expected something. And I got nothing that day after I had gone out of my way to I don't even remember what I did. I had a picture taken, a portrait taken for him. And then I also made a whole bunch of homemade cookies and stuff like that for him because he was away at that time. His work took him to another state for a while. And I got nothing in return, and bam, talked to him on the phone like 10 o'clock that night. And it's like, huh, how you doing, hon? And I could tell right away there was an issue, and Valentine's Day just brought it out. So, it's important that you not walk in with a preconceived notion. I mean, it is just another day. If you can just celebrate your family and your love in a sweet, kind way, just do it. If it's making chocolate chip cookies, if you want to give flowers, fine, but don't expect them, especially if there's a storm outside, and that would make it difficult. Sit by the fire, laugh, watch a funny movie. And if you want to try to have sex, go for it. If you don't think you can have intercourse, you can try outer course. If you don't want to have sex at all, do something else instead. But always, 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 always reiterate that your love is unconditional. And Valentine's Day is about celebrating your love. Okay? So that's what I got, my friends. That's what I got. You can read this on our website. We also have a romance and intimacy center on our website that has 10 tips on things that will make sex more comfortable. Obviously, lubrication is a must. Dry skin on dry skin is a bad thing. I'm talking a half a tube of KY per sex act is the way to go. Other than that, I'll let you go over to the website and read that there. And let's go ahead and start taking your questions. Now remember, on Facebook, your questions scroll by so quickly, I miss them. So please feel free to ask it again. Allison says, it's her wedding anniversary. She'll be 38 years married tomorrow on Valentine's Day. Congratulations. Thank you, Edith. Heather shared a very similar story about something happening on, I don't know, Valentine's Day is hard because, man, it just brings out stuff. It brings out stuff. Elaine says she found one sexual position that does not hurt. Good. Elaine, tell us what it is. That would be really great. Hi, Debbie. Thank you, Erin. Tell your daughter I said thank you. Debbie says, I miss being intimate with your husband. So, Debbie, I think you came in late. So when we're done with this, I want you to watch the beginning of this because I talk about that. I talk about outer course. I talk about other things that you can do if you have pain with intimacy and pain with penetration. There are other options. We have a intimacy and sex resource center right on our website that talks about that. Donna says that her pain is coming from damaged nerves, pudendal nerves. Donna, I would love to talk to you about that afterwards. I have to do a coaching after we're done, but I would love to talk to you because there are always options. There are always treatment options. Okay. Erin says, it's hard to hang on to the concept that others can love us when we don't love ourselves. Boy, oh, that is so true. And that is certainly something, I mean, I'll tell you, I cried for at least a month after we broke up. And then my confidence level was shattered because I realized in hindsight I'd made a really poor choice with the person I thought that I was going to marry. And I didn't trust my judgment at all after that. I really didn't. It's amazing what happens. Lauren says, you got to be direct. We need to be clear. No one is a mind reader. Exactly. If you need a hug, for God's sake, would you please ask for it? Ask for it. Walk up to him, her. You know what? Give him a hug. Susan says, years ago, I purchased quercetin capsules. Does anyone else use them? And Manos when you have a flare? Susan, quercetin is probably the single most important ingredient in most of the supplements for the urinary tract out there, because quercetin has an anti-inflammatory effect. So you're going to find quercetin in Cysto Protect and Cysto Renew. You have to be careful with quercetin, though, because it is the cheap stuff on the market usually comes from citrus bioflavonoids, which comes from kind of all the leftover oranges and lemons and grapefruits out there. And that can be really irritating for an IC patient. So it is better to get a plant-based quercetin rather than a citrus-based quercetin. Manos is effective only in the fact that it can restrict E. coli from attaching to your bladder wall. So if you think you might have an E. coli-based bladder infection or something that might be, emerging, there's nothing wrong with using Manos. The human body does not use Manos in any way. You immediately pee it out. It just happens to have a receptor on it that E. coli can attach to. So when you have a lot of Manos in your urine and you have E. coli in your urine, they merge together and then you pee them out. But remember, most flares are not bacterial, so we wouldn't expect Manos to work for most flares, especially like a pelvic floor flare, something like that. Cindy said that her husband it was all about him, and that's a sign of a fairly immature person who's not capable of thinking of their partner. I'm really sorry about that. Susie, can we clone your husband, please? She says her husband is so supportive. I'm one of the lucky ones. He doesn't care or push. We take advantage of the good days and don't sweat the bad days. Boy. Miranda's husband brings her white chocolate. That's wonderful. And Lauren says, carob, yes. Melinda has a great husband. Miranda says, great husband. Tracy's husband believed that she didn't have a real disease, and so you're divorced now, and he was not worthy of you. He was not worthy of you, and one day he'll figure it out. But there you go. Dale says, hard for me to tell my boyfriend what I want or need. I do feel like he should be able to read my mind. I know that's not realistic and I don't blame him for it, but I've always had a hard time saying what I want or need. Well, Dale, you just got to do it. One of the things that you can do, kind of like for patients in a wicked flare or you're really, really struggling, right? Sometimes what happens is your husband or your wife goes to work and you're at home alone in pain. And it's wrapping you up inside. It's getting, and you're getting more and more frustrated and you feel unworthy and you're suffering and you just don't know what to do next. And you have no relief or release of that stress. And then your partner comes home after a long day at work and you immediately start saying how bad it was. Oh, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. The doctor wouldn't listen to me, yada, yada, yada. And you dump on your partner. And guys, that gets old real fast. I mean, and this is where something like Facebook or the IC Network Support Forum, this is where we shine, because no matter what you say to a spouse who does not have IC, they will never be able to say the right thing back to you. If you say, oh my God, I had soup today, I had black bean soup and it killed me and my bladder is screaming, and you say that to your partner who doesn't have any diet issues, your partner's going to go, oh, okay, glad you learned. But they're not going to be able to say, oh my God, yeah, I got killed by a black bean soup. That's why a support group is good. That's why having IC buddies is good, so that you can vent to them during the day. They're going to be able to say exactly what you need to hear, which is, I totally get it. I understand. I've had the same thing too. And when you release that during the day, when your partner gets home, you don't dump on them. And you can let that go. And that is so, so important. Okay? Okay, please feel free to ask questions here. YouTube, feel free. Oh, here, hold on a sec. YouTube, did I block your chat, the chat for some reason? No. Oh, I did. Oh, YouTube, I'm so sorry. You were talking and it got covered. Heidi on YouTube says her IC is under control by watching what she eats and drinks. Heidi says, are we going to talk about sex only? No, of course not. You can ask any question you want, my dear. Shauna says, you don't have to have sex. I don't feel unworthy. Sex does not equal love, and that is true. What equals love is being with each other through thick and thin, being with each other. Heidi, it's the day before Valentine's, hun. So that there's one day of the year we got to talk about it. It's now, but feel free to ask anything else. Pamela has a fantastic husband, a supportive husband. He will sit in the bathroom with me and hold my hand. And his urologist helped educate him. Awesome. Love to hear it. Penny says, we've never celebrated Valentine's Day. We always snuggle and just know the love is there 365 days a year. Perfect. Penny, words to live by. Catherine celebrates Valentine's Day as a family with a heart-themed dinner and dessert and watch romantic comedies. It's a fun day. Awesome. Lauren uses the Aloe Glide from the ICN shop. Awesome. Stacy says, how do you feel about turmeric and ginger tea that I make? Good, or can it hurt the bladder? You know, a little goes a long way. I would just start with a small amount and see how you do. I would just small amount and see how you do. If you do okay, keep doing it. I am having my IC friendly medicine balm herbal tea from Starbucks. This is peach. This is a peach herbal tea combined with a mint herbal tea with a little bit of honey. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I could drink, you know, I just get it. 150 calories. Loving that. I just refill it all day, re-microwave it. Aaron, so what does one do when they're so focused on the pain or the pain that they can't even relax? If you're at that moment, then that's absolutely not the time to try. But I think having a massage, giving each other massages would be wonderful. Laughter is wonderful. Watching a funny movie is wonderful. You know, if your muscles are locked down tight, it's going to be really hard to do stuff. You guys, I want you to tell the story about how can a man without a penis have a sex life that other men envy? That is a true story, straight from the UC San Francisco Medical School. Michelle asks, what's the best replacement for Elmeron? I want to get off, but what Dr. Robert Evans and Robert Moldwin suggested in their class on IC that they taught at the American Urology Association last June was supplements. Cystoprotec can have a bladder coating effect. Desert Harvest Aloe can have a bladder coating effect. And Cystorenew. So these are considered really the only alternatives for Elmeron that are oral, if you're looking for an oral product. I think the key question is, is there any risk with Elmeron and eye disease if you just use it in a bladder installation? And we don't have the answer to that. Normally, topicals do not become systemic and get into your blood flow and get distributed throughout your body like oral medications do. So using an Elmeron installation might be a reasonable alternative also. But in terms of orals, it's really going to be the Cystoprotec, the Cystorenew. Also, we have the new supplement coming out. I can tell you the name of the new supplement. It is called Bladder Biome, and we should have it in our shop in a couple of weeks. It's a series of supplements that do different things. Donna, is it right that sugar can cause a flare? Not usually, but sugar does promote inflammation. I can't think of anybody who had sugar and had a flare from it. Sugar does not, that's my fax machine. Sugar does not injure the bladder wall like a cup of coffee will. So sugar does not have a caustic effect. So I don't see eating sugar and immediately triggering a flare, but what sugar does do is it promotes inflammation. We want to try to reduce sugars. Liz on YouTube says, I'm wondering if IC goes back to normal or the way it was before or after you have a baby. I sure hope it does. So Liz, you got to remember that we have subtypes. We have subtypes for IC. Some people have lesions. Some people have direct bladder wall injuries from like chemotherapy or from drinking way too much diet soda, or from menopause or from chronic infection. Other people have muscle issues, other people have nerve issues, and some people have central sensitization. So we have those 5 core subtypes for IC, right? Along with subtypes. So your question here is will I get better? Will I ever go back to where I was before? And if pregnancy it was part of the situation, you have to understand that pregnancy changes things. Pregnancy doesn't normally affect the bladder wall, but pregnancy can certainly affect your pelvic floor. And we have a lot of patients who develop IC symptoms after pregnancy because they have sustained a muscle injury or a muscle tear. And what's so, unfortunate about the U.S. healthcare system is that women who have babies are not normally referred to pelvic floor physical therapy like in Europe. If you're in Europe and had a baby, you'd be off to physical therapy very, very quickly to make sure there's no underlying muscle problems that are going on. In the United States, not so much. So I think it's important that, you understand what is driving your pain, and then let's make sure that we're treating it correctly. On our website, I have a link to our video, The 5 Subtypes of IC, and it would be really important for you to watch that. Shauna says, guys just can't cuddle. Well, young guys can't just cuddle. Older guys can cuddle, but that's when you whip out the Tenga or the fleshlight, hun. Works like a charm. Karen on YouTube loves V-Magic, a natural lubricant by Medicine Mama to help vulvar irritation. I use that myself. Let me get it. Hold on. Let me get it. So if anybody out there is struggling with dryness, or you're struggling with urine burn, where you're peeing and as it crosses your vulva, it's burning. It's not your urine hot. It just is a testimony to your skin. And so V Magic, see, I got this darn light now. See, there's a light. And so unfortunately the labels are getting, I don't know how to, there you go. Medicine Mama's V Magic. Okay, it's just like a very, very light Vaseline. It's about as close as you're ever going to get to normal mucus. And so if you struggle with vulvar dryness, this is really good. It's made of organic, organic extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, organic extra virgin avocado oil, beeswax, honey, propolis, and sea buckthorn oil. Gosh, come on, we can talk about anything, right? Some of you ladies know what a dry vulva feels like. It kind of chafes when you walk. The things are supposed to be slippery. If they're not slippery, they get stuck and it's uncomfortable. That's why you use something like Medicine Mama's V Magic. You can find this in the IC Network shop. And I'm super sensitive to stuff. It doesn't bother me at all. I use it a couple times a week. Not that you needed to know that, my friends, but hey, come on, no shame. No reason to hide anything. Peggy says, I've recently been put on the Butran patch for pain, and it seems to be causing problems with the bladder, abdominal cramping, urge to urinate. Johan, you're going to have to research it. I would go to rxlist.com and look at the side effects. I don't have any experience with that at all. Heather reminds us there are always good partners out there, both men and women. She says her favorite thing is just hold hands with her boyfriend. So Liz says, Liz is over on YouTube, and she was the one who was wondering if she would ever go back to feeling like she was before her pregnancy, or if her IC would feel good. And I talked about the muscles. And as she says here, she believes that her subtype is pelvic floor. And normally with her symptoms, she has burning after urination, and the burning sticks around. No, but 5 months down the road, that has taken a vacation. Now it's just a little bladder pressure, no pain in the bladder. So that's really typical of pelvic floor issues, which is you don't have pain as your bladder fills with urine. You tend to have pain afterwards. The lead story in my Winter IC Optimist, which I finished writing yesterday, is on fibroid tumors and IC. And if you were in our support group meeting, 2 support group meetings ago, I was sharing new research. And we finally had a really good research study that showed that women with fibroid tumors, medium to, fibroids are really interesting because they're benign tumors that live either on the surface of the uterus, in the uterus, or even on the outside of the uterus. They can be peduncular. They can have a little tube connected to the outside of the uterus. And they're muscle tissue. They're not associated with cancer. It's extremely rare that a fibroid would ever become cancerous. But it is a benign muscle mass that in some people can grow and grow and grow and grow. And they can be singular, or they can grow in clusters. And so if you have a cluster of fibroids in your uterus, they can be pushing on your bladder and give you bladder pressure or fullness, or they can be pushing on your rectum and give you pressure or fullness on your rectum. And so this was a research study women who had bladder symptoms from their fibroids. They reduced or removed the fibroids, and 65% of those patients were cured of all urinary symptoms. And so if you're a patient out there and you have fibroids, especially big fibroids, please understand that that actually can be triggering some of your urinary symptoms, especially if you have that sensation of fullness and pressure. I was going through our forum, and I was going through 10 years worth of patient messages, looking for all the messages on fibroids. And I was really surprised that I found a lot of them. And really, up to this point, we didn't have good data that showed that treating the fibroids could remove bladder symptoms. Now we have more support for that. On the other hand, how you treat it is important, because you can, if they're small fibroids, they can remove them with ultrasound, and there's no surgery involved. So there's a lot of new ways of treating fibroids that can protect the uterus, keep the uterus. Our goal is to try to keep the uterus so that if you want to have children, you can continue to have children. But if you got, a fibroid the size of a grapefruit that's pressing on your bladder, you got to do something about that, my friends. And if you do something about that, the odds are you might actually feel substantially better. It's worth learning more about. So that is the lead story in our Winter Icy Optimist, which I hope to have back from the printer by the end of the month. I have to finish writing it first. Cheryl on YouTube says, can you have more than one subtype? You can have 3 or 4. Yeah, you can. It's really normal for people to be IC subtype 1 and subtype 3, or IC subtype 2 and subtype 3. Or so IC subtype 1 is Hunner's lesions. Hunner's lesions are painful. Your muscles are going to get tight to protect you in a guiding reflex, thus you have pelvic floor issues too. Same thing with IC subtype 2. If you got bladder wall injury and your bladder screaming or your prostate is screaming, then of course your muscles are going to get tight to try to protect you, and you're going to also end up with pelvic floor issues. I call it the chicken versus the egg dilemma. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And for us, it's which comes first, the bladder or the pelvic floor. If your symptoms began with a bladder injury, like chemotherapy, and your bladder screaming, we know your muscles are going to get tight to protect you. But our therapeutic priority for that patient is to calm and soothe the bladder, because we know when we calm and soothe the bladder, the pelvic floor should release. But think about the opposite. What if you're a patient whose symptoms began after a muscle injury? So if your symptoms began after a fall, or having a baby, and where you sustained a muscle injury, and you don't really know that you have a muscle injury. I mean, obviously it hurt, but you feel better after a bit. But what happens is when you have a muscle injury, that muscle is weakened, and a weak muscle then becomes a tight muscle. And a tight muscle is bad, because a tight muscle can restrict blood flow, and it can compromise nerves. And so you may not even know you have any issues until you first start feeling frequency urgency. And of course, when you have frequency urgency, what happens? You think you got UTI. So you call the doctor and say, hey, I think I got a bladder infection. You ask for antibiotics. And you get the antibiotics, and they don't work. And you go back to the doctor, say, it's happened again. I need antibiotics. And before you know, you got a patient who's been on antibiotics for a long time. Or they then throw you, if you're a man, they put you on prostate meds. Or if you're a woman, they put you on overactive bladder meds. Or they throw IC meds. And the end result is you're not better. You're not better. Why? Because the fundamental problem is really not the bladder. It's the poor circulation from tight pelvic floor muscles. So our therapeutic priority for those patients is to restore circulation. If we can restore circulation, the bladder and the other organs are finally going to get the nutrition it needs, the oxygen it needs to be really healthy and do a really good healing. So getting back to this question of subtypes, we really want to try to figure out what is driving what. One is primary, one is secondary. We're going to deal with both, we don't want you to just treat one and ignore the other. I mean, if your muscles are so tight you can't pee, for God's sake, use a heating pad and relax your muscles, or use a muscle relaxant. But if the bladder's driving it, you still got to work on the bladder, and vice versa. Okay, so let's see. Let me go back down here and finish that. So when I'm looking down, I'm looking at YouTube here. So Shauna says she thinks the outer course is for the man and the mantle. Oh, I completely disagree with you, hun. Outer course is wonderful for women. But I absolutely agree that relationships have to be built on love and respect and companionship and friendship and all that sort of good stuff. Build the relationship on your heart. Yes, Shauna, I completely agree. Heidi says she's got a friend in the hospital where she has a vesicovaginal fistula. What's next? Trying to figure out why the fistula happened in the first place, which might be very, very weak muscles, and potentially repairing that fistula. That's probably going to be the protocol, but she's got to work with her doctor and see. And you would be very helpful for you if you Googled it. You gave her a list of potential treatments so that she could understand the pros and cons of those treatments. Shauna. We could have discussions about size. Is bigger better or is smaller better? And what do you prefer? I don't even want to go there. I'm just going through your questions here, guys. Linda says diet is key for her, very strict, but I'm terrified of the pain, so I stay loyal to it. My husband's been by your side all this time. Awesome. Meredith said, there's a lady who considers herself an IC expert in Washington, D.C. and claims that IC is caused by Lyme. Is any truth to this? No. We have subtypes. Not everybody is. I know who you're talking about. I'm not going to mention her name. This goes back 20 years ago with an original doctor named Dr. Paul Fugazzotto, who was a PhD doctor in PhD, who owned a lab in South Dakota, who believed that most patients with IC had what we called back then a fastidious infection, a very small, deep infection in the bladder wall. And he built a career out of sending patients glass vials. They would send them back to him. He would do what he called a broth culture, and 5 days later would tell them that they had, quote unquote, a bacteria. That was thoroughly debunked when we learned that bacterial biofilms survive autoclaving, and he was autoclaving and heating up to try to sterilize those glass vials, but there was probably a lot of cross-contamination. The person you're talking about also became involved in the IC movement at the time, and her perspective was it was all infection in everyone, and that is simply not the case. However, I have always believed that in IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven, there is a small pocket of patients who have chronic infection. It can be a chronic fungal infection from Candida. It was our own National Institutes of Health who discovered that IC patients having flares often have Candida infections in their urine, which makes total sense because if there's anyone out there who's been overexposed to antibiotics, it is in fact the IC patient community, because every single one of us has been prescribed antibiotics for our IC, even though they were not necessarily helpful. So we know that some patients can have fungal infections. We know that some patients can have viral infections. We had research last spring, which showed that the Epstein-Barr virus from mononucleosis may be at the root cause of Hunner's lesions for some patients. And yes, there is a small subtype of people who have Lyme disease, and that Lyme bacteria can actually be found in the bladder. But what we cannot do is make a blanket statement that every patient with IC has infection. That is simply not true. Yeah, and as we had here, here we had a patient whose symptoms began after having a baby who has a clear muscle injury. Okay, that's proof that not everybody has infection. I also want to say here that anytime you find somebody online who is, quote, promising a cure, you should be very, very careful with that. The very first thing you should do is say, where's the proof? Give me research. Show me the proof. And that's probably the biggest concern I have about this person is she makes pretty big claims about helping people, but she's never published any data. And it's very hard to credibility test those claims. I mean, she's been working with IC patients for 20 years. Surely we would have some case studies by now. So I'm uncomfortable with that. But in the same sense, I have no problem with you having a next generation urine test to see if you have chronic infection. I mean, I did Pog Fugazzotto. I did it myself. He found Enterococcus and Micrococcus. I took Augmentin for 3 months, ended up with a 2-year drug-resistant yeast infection, a beast of a Candida glabrata infection. So there are pros and cons all over the place, my friends. But if you think that you might have infection, have a next generation urine test. I built a website on it. Here, let me get out my I actually hadn't even pulled out my slides yet. Holy moly. If you go to bladderhealth.org, you can see the website I built on it last summer. Lots of videos from doctors who do next generation testing. What's hard is most doctors don't know about it. They just don't know what to do with it. So if you've got a little, local doctor in Podunk, USA, and you give next generation test results to, they're going to go, I don't know what to do with this. So it's the future, but it's a slow future because a lot of doctors need to be educated. Let me see if I've got this here. Where is it? Where is it? You just say, we have a free newsletter on the IC network. I sent one out over the weekend. Come on over and sign up for our free newsletter. I only send them out once a month or once every 2 months. Sorry, guys. I just have all these slides now from these. That's why here it is. That's why I'm switching over to Twitch. I'm going to have all the slides right on my computer, and I can screen share. Okay. So if you suspect you have, a chronic infection or fastidious infection, go to bladderhealth.org and have next generation urine testing. Why not? Why not? Catherine, can you provide an update on Lyris? No, and I'm getting much more assertive about it, hon. I mean, I actually emailed the director, the research director, urology research director, Allergan, last week to try to get an idea of what's going on with Lyris. They are being suspiciously quiet, and that concerns me. I just don't know. They told me last summer, I met the international marketing director for Lyris at AUA. He told me they needed 3 months. I emailed him in August, said, do you have an update? I did not get a response. I emailed him again, did not get a response. So last week, I've been trying. I finally went way up the chain to the director of urology that I'd met before, and not only left him a voicemail, but also sent him an email. For all I know, I've got several messages on my phone that I haven't listened to yet. Catherine says, Catherine on Facebook says her IC began at the end of her last pregnancy. Yep. Is there something going on with Elmeron in this discussion? Lauren makes a good point. Earlier today, we had somebody said, can sugar cause a flare? And no, natural sugar, no, but artificial sugar, oh, hell yeah. Artificial sugar, NutraSweet is metabolized into formic acid. If you had NutraSweet, you would probably, and you got IC subtype 1, IC subtype 2, yeah, you would probably have a flare within an hour. NutraSweet is incredibly provocative to the bladder wall. Normal sugar is not provocative to the bladder wall, although it does promote inflammation. Twyla, when you go to the bathroom and you hurt so bad after, what in the world makes you... Okay, so Twyla, you're asking what makes you hurt so bad after you go to the bathroom. Well, if the pain is external, if the pain is on your skin, then we're talking estrogen atrophy. It means your skin cannot defend itself. Urine contains body waste. Urine contains chemicals. When it crosses your vulva, it hurts. It kind of burns your vulva. And that's when you would do something like this V-Magic that we talked about earlier, that would put a nice protective coating down there. But if the pain is inside your vagina or it's deeper in your body, that's probably a muscle spasm or a bladder spasm. A bladder spasm occurs as the last couple of drops are coming out of you. You know, remember, your bladder is a hollow organ. And so it starts out small, and then as it gets, it's like a balloon. It gets fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller. And then when you pee, it all collapses down, right? And so sometimes when it collapses down and the walls touch each other, they kind of shiver, especially if they're injured. And that can trigger a bladder spasm. And so the only time I had really bad bladder spasms was when I had an infection that I thought was a flare, and it got really bad for 6 weeks before we realized it was an infection. I've only had 2 bladder infections in 25 years, which is pretty cool. But I can remember sitting on the toilet, and it was so violent. I just remember going down like this, and the pain shot up my spine and went down my legs. And I just, you just kind of hold yourself there for, a couple of minutes until that spasm releases. Now, the good news about bladder spasms is that ditropan, also known as oxybutynin, can turn them off very quickly, 20 minutes, little blue pill. And so if you think that you're having bladder spasms, then you can ask your doctor for an antispasmodic. What the heck is going on with my hair? Sorry. Oh, there it is. So what happens when you wash your hair? It goes all over the place. Okay, if you're having pelvic floor spasms from, let's say if you strained really hard to have a bowel movement or to pee, then you're forcing your pelvic floor muscles into spasm. And that would be another reason why you might feel pain. You should never, ever strain to pee or to poop. This is about relaxation. Normally, you sit on the toilet, muscle A relaxes, muscle B relaxes, the sphincter opens, and bam, you empty your bladder. But if your muscles are so tight that they don't relax naturally, you're sitting there and you feel full, and then you start pushing and pushing and pushing to get it out. And unfortunately, you're reinforcing the tension. You're not making it better, you're making it worse. And so it's really, really important that if you've got tight muscles, we got to work on those muscles to restore normal urination, because if you keep straining over and over and over again, you're just going to have worse and worse and worse pelvic floor dysfunction. Okay. Amanda says you have constant burning pain that worsens after you pee. Burning, we associate more with muscles. When a muscle is working hard, it builds up lactic acid. You remember when you were a kid and they would send you to run around the track and you get halfway around the first time before your leg muscles started burning? Okay, why? Because you're working those muscles. Working muscles produce lactic acid. That's the way they function. Lactic acid causes that burning sensation. So tight pelvic floor muscles cause a burning sensation. And it's usually a vaginal burning sensation for women or a rectal burning sensation. Sometimes you feel like something's falling out of you. Sometimes you feel like something's being pushed up inside of you. And for me, when my levator muscle spasm, it's like there's a fist up my vagina pulling downwards. So it's weird. Muscles are weird. I'm reading here. I'm reading Peggy's mention. So hold on. She injured her pelvic floor muscles and was bedridden for most of December. Could not take the pain. Doctors were just telling me to rest, decondition quickly. Finally went to the ER where they gave you some pain meds. Hallelujah. Guys, also really, if you got tight pelvic floor muscles, especially if you're having trouble sleeping, medical marijuana, please, CBD oil, please. You would be amazed at how much that can help some patients. And so if you're struggling sleeping, if you're struggling with tight muscles, CBD oil, either from hemp, which is legal in every state in the United States, or if you're in a state where medical marijuana is legal, CBD oil that comes from medical marijuana, you'd be amazed at how much that can help patients with tight muscles. Lauren is telling somebody that the burning comes from sensitive. If you're peeing and you get urine burn, whereas you're peeing, your vulva is burning. The best thing you could do is have a perineal wash bottle, and that is true. Let me show you. I don't think I've got. Everybody who joins the IC network in their gift pack gets a perineal wash bottle, right? Perineal wash bottle. If you've got vulvodynia, if you've got sensitive skin, this is your lifeline, because you have to remember the toilet tissue will not get chemicals off of your skin, but water will. And so rinsing yourself off with water before and then patting dry afterwards is one of the best things that you can do to calm your skin down there. I knew that because when I had vulvodynia in my 20s, and when I went to a vulvodynia support group meeting, the older women at the time, they seemed really old now. Of course, they're probably my age back then. They took me under their wing and they said, get a peri bottle. And I'm telling you, of all of the things, my vulvodynia was so bad in my 20s, early 20s, I could barely wear jeans, and I would be squirming in the car, driving to work. It was terrible. The single most important thing that helped resolve that and calm my skin down was the silly perineal bottle, which you can get in the IC Network store for $2.99. It might be $3.25, but seriously, it's cheap. Get one for every bathroom in your house. And if you join the IC Network, you'll get one for free anyway. Hey, man, when we give gifts, we give useful gifts, right? Guys, if you're going to use baking soda and water, use very, very little. A quarter teaspoon of baking soda in a glass of water once a day is enough. Baking soda does contain sodium. It can increase your blood pressure, so you do not go over the top with baking soda. Lauren says, V-Magic is great for face as well. You know, I keep getting these rashes down here because my skin is dry. Maybe I should try some on my skin before I take a shower. Let's see. I'm willing to try it. It'll be a living proof if I turn bright red there while we're doing this video, then don't do it. I'll sacrifice my body for science. God, you guys are so good supporting each other. You're just awesome. Pre-leaf also, Lauren's asking, what about pre-leaf? Pre-leaf also is a calcium formula, calcium glycerophosphate. And it's been around for 25 years. It's the most popular supplement ever used by IC patients. And it's just fabulous. So, but you cannot take pre-leaf if you are prone to calcium-based kidney stones because it is calcium. And also, some patients make the mistake of treating this like candy, and you cannot do that. You don't just keep swallowing supplements, guys. You use it only when you're eating, if you're going to eat something that's a risk factor. I'm not a big fan of taking vitamins every day or taking lots of supplements every day because we didn't have them 100 years ago, and our body was designed for life 5,000 years ago. I don't necessarily believe the marketing claims of people who say you have to take stuff to be healthy. Kay says, in Texas, Jill, in Texas, in September 2019, they're making you sign a consent or contract for pain meds, going to the same doctor in the same pharmacy. Is this the same in other states? Yeah, hun, it is. It is. I mean, that's routine. That's routine now. I mean, because drug addicts doctor shop and they go to a lot of different doctors. In California now, it's all tracked online. They're triplicate. I mean, they're trying to save lives, and I understand that. I absolutely understand. Okay, this is driving me crazy. And I'm looking at a reverse image. Okay. Sorry. I'm just weird. I'm so weird about stuff. We just mix it up. Okay, there you go. That'll work. Heidi says, where do we find CBD organic legit oil to ingest? You can find hemp online. You can find it at Target and CVS, some of the big stores. You could try Sprouts. You could try any of the organic grocery stores. Shauna says your knee surgeon tried to get you to do something. I don't quite understand what they wanted you to try to do. You know, I mean, let's talk about pain meds for a moment. I would not be here if I had not had access to pain meds. I'll tell you very honestly that in 1990, remember although I'm IC subtype 5 central sensitization and I had vulvodynia and irritable bowel in my 20s, I did not have bladder pain until I was 32, and I was in a swimming pool accident where I was distance swimming and training for a triathlon, and the pool made a massive mistake with their chemicals. And I swam and swallowed it, and a bunch of us did, and a bunch of people got hurt. We would have been blinded if we hadn't been wearing goggles, because it turned out that they bombed the pool and they forgot to put the close sign up. And so I swam in massive levels of chemicals, and I ended up with the equivalent of chemocystitis. That was my diagnosis the next day, was chemocystitis. And I called the pool the next day. I mean, so I swam and I could see that the water was different. And I guess I was so addicted to swimming because I felt good when I did it. I ignored my instincts and kept swimming. And I swam in it for about 30 minutes, even though I could see precipitate in the water settling down to the bottom of the pool. And again, I wasn't the only one. And then that night I woke up with agonizing pain. It felt like a really, really bad bladder infection. But I was like, what happened? I hadn't had sex, and normally sex would be the trigger for me. So I called the pool the next day, and I said, so is anything weird going on at the pool? And he goes, why? And I said, well, I swam yesterday, and he blocked me, stopped me, and he goes, you swam? And I went, yeah, I swam. A bunch of us swam. He goes, wasn't the close sign up? And I went, no. And he goes, we bombed the pool yesterday. No one was supposed to swim yesterday. And then he asked what my symptoms were, which was peeing and, a lot of bladder pain. He goes, yeah, we've had a lot of complaints about that. It's like, I should have sued them. I couldn't sue them because we didn't have the research that proved it. We have the research now from the Center for Disease Control. We didn't have that research 25 years ago. So I was in excruciating pain for every day for a year. Why? Because what was I doing? But I was drinking a quart of cranberry juice every day, not having a clue that I had a chemical burn in my bladder. So imagine you have a burn and you start pouring acid on it every day. Holy hell. So what started out as probably not that big of a burn, because of the daily acid exposure, at the end of that year, I was barely walking. I was crying in the car. I would go to work, every speed bump, I would scream. I'm not lying. I would scream. And I would walk into the office bawling, and everybody in my job was like, what the hell is wrong with Jill? And I had no pain meds during that whole thing until I finally ended up at the hospital emergency room 2 days in a row. And they gave me a shot, and it turned the pain off. It's like, you can turn the pain off? What? What? You can turn this off? And it took a year before my urologist went, wow, you need pain meds. And they finally gave me a prescription for Vicodin, the 5 milligram codeine, the 500 milligram Tylenol, which of course, or acetaminophen, which they now do less acetaminophen to reduce liver issues. So, and it's so funny because I'm a pharmacologist. My degree's in pharmacology, drug development, and it never dawned on me to ask for pain meds. Never dawned on me. I mean, silly. So they gave me the prescription, and I took one pill, one whole Vicodin, the big old Vicodin, and I got very loopy and nauseous. And I didn't like that very much. And now some of you would think, well, maybe you're allergic to it. It's like, no, definitely not allergic to it. Didn't affect my blood breathing, nothing like that. So the next time I took it, I took a half a pill. And the half a pill turned the pain off, but I wasn't nauseous and I wasn't as loopy. And then the next time I took it, I took a quarter of a pill. And the quarter of a pill turned the pain off, and I had no side effects at all. And so the mistake that some patients make with pain meds is you wake up in the morning, you think the pain's really bad, and you take 2 pills. But what if 1/4 of a pill might have turned that pain off? Not only have you wasted 2 pills, but that's a lot of medicine that has the potential of creating a dependence. Not an addiction, just a dependence. So, I chaired our state pain conference, which helped the governor of California sign the Pain Patients Bill of Rights. I've testified up in Sacramento about pain care. And what I do for myself personally, nobody could accuse me of being a drug abuser in any way, shape, or form, taking 1/4 of a pill maybe once every 3 months. And maybe not even that much. I mean, my IC is so calm right now. I don't have to, but if you allow yourself, if you're one of those people where you don't want to take any pain meds at all, the problem is that pain is like fighting a fire. And if you got a fire in your little wastebasket, one piece of paper on fire, you can put it out with a glass of water and you're fine. But if you let that fire grow until your wall is involved and your drapes are involved, it's going to take thousands of gallons of water to turn it off. Pain is exactly the same way. If you catch pain when it's tiny, you can nip it in the bud with a tiny amount of medicine. But if you allow the pain to build and build and build and build and build, it's going to take a lot more nerves are going to be involved, and it's going to be take a lot more work and a lot more medication potentially to turn it off. And so here's what I do. And this is what I do. This is the way I work that out for me. If I'm in pain for 30 minutes, and I'm talking big time bladder pain. If I feel pain or in my pelvis for 30 minutes, I stop what I'm doing. I grab a heating pad, lay in the recliner, throw it on my over my pelvis, over my bladder, and I wait 30 minutes because I want to make sure it's just not a pelvic floor flare, because I will get them far more frequently than a bladder wall flare. Okay. Then 30 minutes later, if I'm still in pain, I give myself permission to take a tiny, tiny, tiny 1/4 of something like a Vicodin if I have it, and then again in my brain, it's like I'm waiting an hour before I do anything else. I'm not taking more. I'm going to give that because it takes about 40 minutes for pain meds to get into your bloodstream to do anything. I'm going to wait an hour. I will tell you that 9 times out of 10 for me, knowing that I had that chemical injury, 9 times out of 10, that 1/4 of a pill will stop that flare. An hour later, I'm fine. I'm back to doing what I'm doing. But if it's not better an hour later, I give myself permission to take another 1/4 of a pill. So again, I've only taken a half of a pill. And again, I wait an hour. And so if you have a doctor who is reluctant to give you pain meds, as so many are now because of the opiate crisis, one of the things that you could do is say, okay, listen, doc, I'm not asking for a lot, but I'm suffering here. I would like 5. Can you give me just 5 pills? That's all I want, 5 pills. I'm going to cut them into quarters. And this is how I propose to use them. I'm going to try to stay ahead of the pain. Can we just do that as an experiment and see if that might help me function normally? Hey, dude, on YouTube, seriously, we are having a real medical support group. We are not talking politics. And you need to respect that, because there are people here who are suffering. This is the last place anybody should come in and make jokes and whatever. So I'm going to respectfully ask you to leave. All right. Another way of talking about pain medicine with your doctors is to talk about functionality. Functionality. You don't go in and ask for pain meds because you look like a drug seeker, and that's a real problem right now. And we have to respect that people are dying because of especially fentanyl and stuff like that, which I would never use. Never use. Yeah, first of all, understand that there are different types of opiates. There are short-term opiates, and then there are time-release long-term opiates. Fentanyl is an example of a very intense time-release opiate. Something like Vicodin or Norco only lasts for 4 hours. It is a short-acting opiate. So you're not walking in asking for fentanyl. You're not walking in asking for oxy. You're just asking for the mildest opiate that you can try to see if that might at least give you comfort. Okay, but again, you want to talk about functionality. So if you're in so much pain that you cannot get out of bed, if you cannot go buy food, if you cannot sit at work, if you cannot get in the car or sit in the car to drive to work, if you talk to the doctor and say, this is how this is affecting me, what can we do to improve my functionality so that I can do the things I need to do? And that's when the doctor will say, maybe we might want to try a little tiny bit of a medicine and see if that might help. So that's another way of bringing it up. Very complex issue, guys. It's a very, very complex issue. The American Urology Association is in support of the use of opiate medication for IC pain. They are very serious about pain. They want pain assessed at every single appointment. But they want you to do more than that. We want to get to the source of the pain. Quite a few patients with long-term recurring pain have untreated Hunner's lesions, and that is such a tragedy because when you treat a lesion, the pain will go away or it will improve. For many patients, the pain goes away, and for some people, it's still there, but it's better. So if we can at least treat the lesion, treat the source of the pain, then you won't necessarily need the pain medicine in the first place. And I think that that's one reason why I don't have to use pain meds. Like I haven't, I mean, seriously, the Norco that I have, I probably got 5 years ago for, I don't even remember what. And I still have like, I think they gave me 30 pills. I still think I have like 20 pills. I mean, nobody could ever say I'm a drug abuser, but I support the use of it if necessary. We need to try to reduce that nerve, that entire process of pain escalating through the nervous system. All right, let's go back. And guys, if normally I can delete stuff. And for some reason, it's just not letting me delete what he wrote on YouTube. We had what I would call a fidiot. You know what I mean? An effing idiot who came in and said a couple of things on YouTube. All right, just going through your questions here. Meredith says she was helped with an IV of vitamin B, vitamin C, and hydrogen peroxide for a year. Ooh, Betty. The hydrogen peroxide IV, woo, that's very controversial. I don't know anybody who recommends it at this point in time. Amanda says she was diagnosed with UTIs most of her life and it always returned. A year ago, she had a bladder stretch. Confirmation of IC that gave her relief. However, in the past month, she's having a nonstop burning. They put you on amitriptyline, methenamine, but so far it's not helping. It definitely seems worse since I've had a total hysterectomy 2 years ago. Yeah. All right. So Amanda, we got to have a pelvic floor assessment, my dear. Hysterectomy, pretty well known for causing pelvic floor issues. I had mine 18 months ago, and I can squirm just thinking about how bad it was. So honestly, Amanda, I would love to talk to you if you want to give me a phone call at the IC Network sometime this week, talk about that post-hysterectomy recovery and how well known that is for causing muscle problems, and that burning may be being driven by muscle issues. I had massive burning, massive pain after mine for months and months and months and months. And I would encourage you to go to a website called HysterSisters, HysterSisters.com. Michelle says, can I jump to Sister Protec Aloe Vera from Elmeron, or do I have to wean off gradually after you've taken Elmeron and amitriptyline daily for 19 years? All right, so I can answer that straight from the source. In our guest lecture series on the IC Network, Dr. Lowell Parsons, the man who invented Elmeron, was a guest speaker years ago. And one of our members asked him, they said, will I have to take Elmeron for the rest of my life? And he said, no. You just have to figure out if it's helping you. So how do you do that? He said, reduce the dose gradually. So if you normally take 3 a day, go to 2 a day for a week. If your symptoms do not change, then that means maybe it's not helping you. Go to 1 a day. If your symptoms do not change, then maybe it's not helping you. If your symptoms do change and get worse, then maybe it's helping you. So what he said, straight from the horse's mouth, is gradual. Now, he and Dr. Theoharides appeared at the San Diego IC conference 13 years ago. Dr. Theoharides is the doctor who invented Sister Protec, and they were asked again about how to make that transition, and they suggested a 1-to-1 swap. So if you normally take 3 Elmeron, take 2 Elmeron and 1 Sister Protec for a week. See if anything changes. If nothing changes, go to 2 and 2 or whatever, and slowly do it that way to see, so anyway, that's basically what they said is go gradual and just pay attention. If your symptoms change for the worse, that means the Elmeron's helping you. If your symptoms change for the better, it might not be. And you could kind of apply the same thing to making that transition to Sister Protec. I think it's good that you're considering making a change like that, only because you've taken it for a long time, 19 years. Elmeron is very, very expensive. It's not worth going bankrupt over, in my opinion, when we have other therapies that are affordable, that have similar results in research studies. And even more so, Elmeron is now associated with some pretty significant eye issues, and we don't want that to happen to you too. So contemplating that change, I think, is interesting, but of course, talk to your doctor about it. Hi, Anna. Maria says, is azo bad to take regularly? The answer is yes. Azo is not meant to be taken for the long term. It is only meant to be taken for short periods of time, like a week, 3 to 4 days. Because of either liver damage or kidney damage. I don't remember which. Stephanie says, Jill, I've been following you since 2008. Thank you so much for what you do. You've helped so much in my care for IC, educate my doctor, and now I can function almost 100% normally. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I can too. And yet, when I was at my worst, I thought I was going to die in a year because my pain was so bad. It wouldn't have even dawned on me that I could get better. And look at me now. I'm as good as you are. Healing happens, my friends. Healing happens. But it begins with you understanding your subtype. And let's focus on, remember, each one of you is an anatomical mystery to be solved. You are not the same. Everybody has different variations, varieties, injuries, infections, whatever, okay? So, unlike 20 years ago when our only therapies were Elmeron and diet, today it's very, very different. I mean, the best possible time for you to have been diagnosed with IC is, in fact, in 2019, because we have so many resources now that we didn't have years ago. I don't want you to be diagnosed with it, but at least there's so much hope. And we know healing is always happening, always happening. The challenge is we often get in the way of healing, whether it is muscle from you straining. Here you've got weak muscles. If you're pushing to pee or poop, you're going to reinforce muscle tension. You're going to make it hard for those muscles to heal. Just like if you've got a bladder wall injury and you're drinking coffee on a wound makes absolutely no mistake. If you had a wound on your hand, would you pour coffee on it every day? Hell no. Of course not. So don't do it to a wound in your bladder. So anyway, I can rant. Allison says, so true. If we eat a healthy diet, we should get all the nutrients we need, save money, eat healthy, don't buy supplements. I really agree with that, especially with respect to multivitamins. The human body cannot use like 95% or more of the vitamin that we would eat. You pee it out right away. It's impossible for the human body to take up and grab and use all those molecules. We have limited metabolic pathways. We've got limited ways for vitamins to be used in the human body. And so if as I just to give you a number, if we can only pick up 100 molecules, but you put 1,000 molecules in there, 900 are going to go out to waste, right? And so I don't believe in taking a vitamin every day. I'll take a vitamin maybe once a week. And sometimes I just cut it in half or cut it in a quarter. In contrast, when we're talking about this, the supplements here, I mean, seriously, if you've got a wounded bladder wall and we're trying to create an environment that will help that bladder wall heal, or if you've got menopause, so again, here's a 3-dimensional picture of the bladder. Boy, I bet these guys had no clue that this old postcard they did 10 years ago would be one of the most important educational tools we use today. You can't even get these postcards anymore, right? So here's a 3-dimensional picture of a mucous membrane, the bladder, the urethra. So you've got a top layer of mucus, you've got 4 to 5 layers of urothelial cells, and then you've got blood vessels and nerves. Unfortunately, this mucosal barrier can be damaged. And when it's damaged, what happens? Bam! The irritants in urine get right where they're not supposed to go. So if you're a smoker, all those toxic metabolites from the smoke or byproducts end up right in the skin. And no wonder smoking is the #1 cause of bladder cancer, right? So, or if you're menopausal, this mucosal barrier is estrogen dependent. So if you're young and you have lots of estrogen, you got lots of mucus. If you're in your 40s or older, you don't have as much estrogen, you don't have as much mucus. Therefore, your bladder's ability to defend itself is minimized. Bam. That's why if you were a big coffee drinker in your 40s and all of a sudden in your 50s, coffee hurts, it's often just because of the loss of this mucosal barrier. So what do you do when you don't have a nice thick coating? Well, that's what Elmeron does. Elmeron gives you a coating. And these also are believed to have a bladder coating effect from chondroitin and sodium hyaluronate. Those actually are IC therapies in Canada and Europe. They will instill, it's called Ialuril. It's a bladder installation composed of chondroitin and hyaluronate that they put directly in the bladder. In the United States, those are not approved, but we do have the ability to get those orally. The question is, will they make it in quantity to the bladder to be helpful? And the answer is not as much as we'd like, for sure. Of Elmeron, I think 93% of it is destroyed by digestion. You only get 7% of it to arrive in your bladder. And that's why you have to take a lot of it over a long period of time for it to be helpful. And that's why patients are more prone to side effects. And so, when people ask again, with these supplements, well, how much of these can make it to the bladder? And I don't know the answer. I don't believe that they've done that study, but I think it's fairly similar. So in general, again, I don't believe in taking vitamins every day. I don't. But if you've got a really sensitive bladder wall and you're trying to drink coffee every day, it's going to hurt like hell unless you have a little bit of coating in there. And that's when using something like this might be reasonable, a reasonable effort to try. Now, the FDA is very clear that supplements should not make any claims with respect to any diseases, and I'm not doing that. So what these guys are saying is that these are good for bladder health in general. Okay, so going back to your questions, Donna says she loves Sister Protect. Kay says, can the levator ana muscle just continue to spasm for months on end? Yes! Holy hell, yes. Mine spasmed for 10 months. 10 months. And when I went to my surgeon who did my hysterectomy and he finally went in and looked, he could see it quivering. It was quivering. And he said, oh my God, you are having involuntary muscle spasm. And I'm like, dude, I have been telling you that every week since the surgery. I've been emailing you. This doesn't feel normal. And pelvic floor physical therapy is what stopped it. It took 3 visits to pelvic floor physical therapy to stop that levator pulling sensation. Brian says he would recommend oral cannabis for spasm. Again, organic, looking at testing results, things like that. Just make sure if you're doing a medical marijuana or anything like that, you want to make sure that you see the testing results so that it's not contaminated with pesticides. Liz says, what's the supplement? Cystoprotec. The most common supplements, Cystoprotec, Cystorenew, Desert Harvest Aloe, and we have a new supplement that's coming. And hold on a sec, let me just check that. Hey, Guy. Hey, I'm doing a live support group meeting right now.
Can you talk?
No, I can't unless you want everybody to hear you. So I'll call you back, okay?
Okay, bye.
Okay. Oh, that's funny. The aloe, Liz, was Desert Harvest Aloe. Just hold that up one more time. You can get it in our store on Amazon. We sell it in both places. And guys, so you know what? Do you like these support group meetings? If you like this support group meeting, we need your help. If you want these support group meetings to continue, it would be really great if you could become a member of the IC Network and get our lovely magazine, the IC Optimist, which we pour our heart and soul into it comes out 4 times a year. And that's what helps make these meetings happen, it gives us the time to be able to do this. Otherwise, I can't even begin to tell you, the IC Network probably wouldn't exist without our members. So you can sign up for a membership over on our page. Just click on shop. You can go to ICN memberships. And there's 3 different types of memberships. You have immediate access to stuff, all sorts of goodies. We have gift packs, all sorts of good things like that. Also, if you're on Facebook, would you please take a moment and like our Facebook page? And if you're on YouTube, could you please subscribe to our channel? That would be oh so awesome. All right. Lauren says, the issue with her is pain meds is retention. Opiates can cause retention. Be careful. Avoid. Yeah, everybody's different, hon. Everybody's different. We all have very different funky tolerances. So what works for one person doesn't work for the other and vice versa. So guys, remember, ultimately in the end, it's your unique body. None of us can tell you for sure if something's going to work for you or not. You have to try it. Talk with your doctor, learn the pros, learn the cons, learn the potential side effects. If you watched our last support group meeting, I gave the big warning on fluoroquinolones. Cipro, Levaquin, and antibiotics are no longer recommended for UTI because they are associated now with very, very severe adverse events. Aortic aneurysm, tendon ruptures, central nervous system issues. There are some people who take one pill and they can be disabled for life because of the central nervous system problems that it causes. God, the phones are busy today. Holy moly. Okay, if you're calling, stop. I'm not going to be able to answer the phone right now. Or leave a message and I'll call you back when I can. But I probably have 20 messages to return right now. Stephanie didn't know the difference between bladder and pelvic floor flare-ups. Yeah, a lot of us didn't. You know what convinced me? Back after my chemical burn, I thought that I was having bladder flares when in fact I was having pelvic floor flares. And I mean, once my bladder had an opportunity to heal a little bit more, most of my pain was coming from my pelvic floor because my pelvic floor was so tight from dealing with all that bladder pain. And I remember I was doing something and I got startled and I thought I had leaked. You know, I thought I'd felt that little tiny drop of urine. Although, you know, at the moment I looked down and I thought, oh my God, there's got to be a puddle underneath me. And there wasn't. I was like literally a little tiny, tiny drop of urine on my mini pad. But what I did is for the rest of the day, I deliberately tightened my pelvic floor because I didn't want to leak. And what happened is I gave myself one of the worst IC flares I ever had from doing that. And that really helped me understand the tight pelvic floor muscles trigger all the symptoms that we would normally associate with the bladder. So Catherine is saying, should you be using tramadol for pain? Some people do. You got to research it and use it. I mean, you research it, talk with your doctor about it, learn the pros and cons, see what you think. Tramadol is considered a very mild opiate medication, if I remember correctly. I'm not afraid of pain medicine, hon. You guys, I'm not afraid of pain medicine except for fentanyl. I would never use fentanyl or a synthetic opioid in any, in that class. But a mild opiate, but that has a short action, and tramadol is called Ultram. It's certainly something that is worth learning more about. Stephanie is talking about kratom. Stephanie, unfortunately, there was yet another FDA alert about kratom. And so kratom is pretty controversial right now. I do not feel comfortable recommending it. So it looks like the last alert was in May of last year. They sent warning letters to 3 distributors of kratom products. And they very clearly believe that companies were selling it to treat opioid addiction and withdrawal and yada, yada, yada. And the FDA does not believe that kratom, or it believes that it has some pretty significant risks. The US FDA has no approved use for kratom, and they continue to receive a lot of safety alerts for it. So yeah, I know some people really like it and you're looking for options, but guys, you got to do your due diligence. You got to read about it. Just because you hear about it on Facebook or anywhere does not necessarily mean it's real. You got to do your due diligence and Google it and learn about it. So if you want to learn about kratom, Kratom, Google it. Google kratom FDA, read about it, read what they say about it, and then you have to decide if you're comfortable with that or not. It is not something that I would do at this point in time. But then I'm a geek scientist, and so Marianne Mather says, what's the best way to treat interstitial cystitis? Do you consider a holistic approach is much more effective? Number one, I'm all about holistic. Absolutely. Non-invasive interventions. Absolutely. But Mary, the best way to treat interstitial cystitis is to treat your subtype. So you need to know what your subtype is first. We no longer make a blanket statement that one treatment works for everyone. We know that does not work, period. So you have to have a healthy respect for the fact that there's tremendous diversity in the IC patient population. Some people have bloody bladder walls that look like bloody hamburger or lesions. Other people have completely normal bladders, both diagnosed with IC, yet clearly they're not the same. Some people have terrible pain. Others have no pain. They just have frequency urgency. Both would be diagnosed with IC, yet clearly they're not the same. And when you look at how symptoms start in patients, that's where you really see the diversity, because for some people, IC begins in childhood. For others, IC begins in menopause. Clearly, they're not the same. For some people, IC begins after chemotherapy. For others, IC begins after falling and hurting their tailbone. Clearly, they're not the same. So what we're doing what we've been doing for the last 5 years is something called subtyping. We want to try to understand your unique variation of IC before we can even talk about treatment. And I use a subtyping system that was created by Dr. Christopher Payne who ran the IC research program at Stanford University. I will tell you, in Europe, they have at least 12 subtypes. In Canada, they use 6 subtypes. They use the U-point subtyping system. In the United States, we do not have a nationally agreed upon subtyping system as yet. So I use the subtyping system that was created by Dr. Payne. And when he introduced his subtyping system, he did it in a really provocative way, because he said we should treat IC patients like cancer patients. Now, of course, as soon as I hear cancer, I'm like going, don't say cancer. That's going to scare people. There's no connection between IC and cancer. We're not going there. And his answer back is, we're not saying that IC is cancer, but look at how a cancer patient is treated. When somebody is diagnosed with cancer, they get a very specific diagnosis. They are told that they've got cancer of the left breast that is estrogen dependent type 1, 2, 3. And with a cancer diagnosis that is that specific, here we go, that patient and that doctor know exactly what treatments to do. Exactly. There's no confusion. And so for me, I had, with my uterine thing, I had complex endometrial hyperplasia with atypia and a vague architectural complex. I say that very quickly now. What that meant is I had just the start of cancer. We knew exactly what to do, a hysterectomy. Dr. Payne argues that when somebody's diagnosed with IC, there's no intuitive pathway. You don't know what the hell to do next, right? Really, neither does your doctor. There's no intuitive, logical pathway when you give somebody a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis. So he said, so how do we get there? How do we give you an intuitive pathway? We do it with subtyping. We need specificity. When we can give you a more specific diagnosis, we can focus on more specific treatments for you. Because, hello, Elmeron does not work for everyone in any way, shape, or form. And the company made a lot of money with thousands, hundreds of thousands of Elmeron prescriptions that, in hindsight, were probably completely inappropriate for the vast majority of patients out there. So here's what Dr. Payne suggested. Okay, so here we go. Christopher Payne, he's now at Vista Urology. You can go to his website. And I'm sorry about the color changing. It does whenever I lift anything. It's a computer. Here are his 5 subtypes or phenotypes for IC. Now, he argues that within these 5 subtypes, there are subtypes. And he is absolutely right. There are subtypes. But we got 5 fundamental subtypes here, okay? IC subtype 1, Hunner's lesions. Everyone working with IC around the world agrees that patients with Hunner's lesions represent a unique patient group. So much so that they have been arguing that Hunner's lesion patients should be split off and its own disease be made and established so that Hunner's lesion patients get the research they are due. That's not going to happen, and I can't get into that right now. But anyway, a Hunner's lesion, when we look in the bladder, is a profound area of inflammation, irritation. It has a stellate appearance, which means it looks like stars. There's usually a center red area with red lines going from the star, and I have pictures of it. I just had it. I can't wait to get on. I cannot wait to get over onto Twitch because I can automate all this. Come on. It's in here. It's just stuck. Hold on. Here it is. Whoa. Okay. Whoops. Sorry. All right. Here are 16 pictures of Hunner's lesions from a research study. So I want you to look at this one. You see the red spot, and you see the red lines going away from it? Or if you see, look at this one, center spot, lines going away from it. Hunner's lesions are known for bleeding profusely during a hydrodistension, like a waterfall. It's called a waterfall effect. The rest of us, now this only is believed to affect 5 to 10% of the IC patient community, although we have one research study that suggests it's 25% or around there. But clearly, you all are different. The rest of us have normal bladders, or bladders that have little red spots. Okay, this is very different from this. Okay, so subtype number 1, Hunner's lesions. Hunner's lesions are now, at least we have a couple of research studies that suggest that Hunner's lesions may actually be a rare viral infection of the bladder wall. You think bacterial infection, okay, that makes sense. Fungal infection, that's kind of a new concept, and you have a yeast infection in your bladder. We now know that's possible. We now have a couple of studies that suggest that Hunner's lesions could actually be a viral infection of the bladder wall, which would explain why they recur, which would explain why Elmeron doesn't work. So what works for a Hunner's lesion? Lesion-specific therapy. They're either going to inject a steroid into the lesion, into the center, to calm that inflammation, or they're going to laser it to stop the bleeding. They're going to laser it or fulgurate it. Okay, so that's group 1. Best treatment for them is treating the lesions, following the diet, because clearly you got a big time injury going on there. And there may be more, you know, there may be more. Like Lyris, I just don't. Lyris is the first treatment in history to heal Hunner's lesions in 2 weeks. It's just not available to the public right now. And we're trying to figure out why it's not available. IC subtype 2, bladder wall injury. So these are the patients whose symptoms begin after chemotherapy. Because remember, here's your bladder wall. You have a layer of mucus. That mucus is not concrete or steel. That mucus is vulnerable. It's like the mucus in your mouth. It can be damaged. And when that mucus is damaged, bad things happen to the cells underneath. So how is that mucus damaged? Lots of different ways. Chemicals. It can be the corrosive effect of drinking a lot of coffee, taking drugs like ketamine, artificial sugar potentially. This was designed for life 5,000 years ago, not for today's modern chemical diet where there's lots of toxins in what we're eating and a lot of acid in what we're eating. We can successfully argue, in my opinion, that what was life like 5,000 years ago? I come from Norway. What were my people eating 5,000 years ago in Norway? Fish, deer, you know, seals. Maybe apples, maybe berries, and salt. There was no orange juice. There was no caffeine. There was no chocolate 5,000 years ago in Norway. So I think I can make the argument for me specifically that through the concept of evolutionary adaptation, my body has not had an opportunity to develop new defenses for high acids when compared to somebody who grew up, whose heredity is around the equator where you had lots of fruit. If you're Spanish, from Spain, where oranges grew, or Italy, or Mexico, or Hawaii, or Asia, where you're closer to the equator, where you got a warmer climate, you got more fruits to grow. For you, your ancestors were exposed to a lot of acids over time. So your body has more defenses potentially than my body. That is my position on that. Okay. So bladder wall driven, this is an example of what a bladder wall injury looks like. Okay, you get red spots, not a lesion, you get red spots. So what are these red spots? Well, they could be corrosion, they could be an injury. Chronic infection, maybe. Fungal infection, maybe. Is this what a bladder looks like if you're menopausal and you don't have mucus and you're drinking coffee every day? Maybe. Maybe. Okay. So what are the treatments for bladder wall driven? Well, number one, we don't look at it necessarily as a disease process as much as we look at it more as an injury. Because again, for these patients, when we biopsy these patients, there's very, very little inflammation. So that means that there's not an inflammatory process happening, which kind of rules out the concept of infection more. We kind of, again, we're thinking more injury or trauma. So we want to follow the diet to protect those tissues. And we want to create an environment that would support healing. And this is where the concept of a coating like Elmeron, like Sister Protein, make more sense. Because if we can put a coating over this wound, and this is an old Elmeron slide, so this is how they demonstrate Elmeron working. If you put a chemical Band-Aid in here, you're at least protecting irritants. So you think about my chemical burn. I had a chemical burn that got bigger and bigger and bigger because I was drinking cranberry every day. And at the end of that year, I was in, my bladder, I think, was pretty stripped of mucus. And it took time, but my bladder's healed, and I have a completely normal looking bladder now, as we found last year. So healing happens. Okay. You can learn more about the bladder wall driven treatments. You could do an antihistamine to reduce mast cell induced irritation. You can do a low dose antidepressant to calm nerves. I can go over that for you if you want to see that, but let's finish these subtypes. I see subtype 3, pelvic floor injury. This is considered to be the biggest subtype. And when Dr. Payne created his subtyping system, one of the things that he really ran it on was how unfair it is to tell patients that this is incurable. Because that's not true, that for some patients, cure is possible. And it is this subtype that is one of the most responsive subtypes to treatment. Pelvic floor physical therapy can cure people with pelvic floor injuries. So if you've got muscle tension now, of course, 20 years ago, they were not assessing muscles when you were diagnosed with IC. Today, when you go into a doctor at your very first appointment, they should be checking for your muscles. If your muscles are tight, you should be referred to physical therapy immediately, because doing bladder wall driven stuff makes no sense if your muscles are your dominant problem. I see subtype 4, pudendal neuralgia. These are patients who have nerve injuries. And in many cases, it comes right back to muscles so tight, they're compromising nerves. So the therapy for this is to reduce the tension on those muscles so those muscles are not squeezing nerves like they are. So these people with pudendal neuralgia have movement-driven symptoms. They usually sleep well, but when they bend over, when they sit down, or when they walk or move in a certain position, that causes the muscle to hit the nerve, and that causes pain. And then the last subtype is central sensitization. I see subtype 5. This is an inherited subtype. And this is really where a lot of the research is happening right now. Everybody is focusing on trying to understand nerve sensitization and how it's happening. For some of us, it is inherited. It is inherited in my family. My mother has IC and vulvodynia. My sister, my grandmother, my aunt, my cousin. Hello, I'm a redhead from Norway. I've got the world's sensitive skin on my arm. I'm drug sensitive. I'm food sensitive. We tend to have a wicked sense of smell. We can smell things that other people cannot smell, and smells drive us crazy. We tend to be very chemically sensitive. So that central sensitization is often the gift of our ancestry. Sometimes central sensitization can happen after trauma. We're also looking at childhood trauma potentially causing some central sensitization. And in these patients, I asked Dr. Ken Peters, who is really the top IC researcher in the country, and he's the chairman of the urology department at Beaumont Health. He's one of our board members, and he's one of the top IC doctors in the world. I said, what do you do when you have a central sensitization patient come in? And he was really funny. He goes, I back away very carefully. Now, what he was really saying is, I don't want to do anything that's going to turn their nerves on. I'm going to be very, very gentle with a CSS patient. So these are the patients that aggressive testing is really not done. You know, we want to back off. We want to calm things. We don't want to aggravate things. So you can learn a lot more about the subtypes. Delia is asking, are we still live? Yeah, we're still live. So anyway, getting back to that question on Facebook, what's the best treatment? It's all about your subtype, hun. So we have a video on our website called The 5 Subtypes of IC. Please come on over to the IC Network, watch that video, and try to subtype yourself. If you're struggling with it, feel free to call. We would be happy to help you, and then you can go talk to your doctor about it. A lot of doctors don't know about this subtype, so you are going to be the educators. Susan, what options do people have if they've stopped the Elmeron and can't tolerate the Sister Protect, Sister Renew, or the Aloe? Rescue installation, maybe a heparin lidocaine installation. You could always break it down. You could break it into individual ingredients. I mean, you could just try a chondroitin. If you can find a chondroitin that comes from chicken. Chondroitin, there are 3 common sources for chondroitin sulfate. Shark fin, and we do not want to support that industry because millions of sharks are getting slaughtered every year. Well, they're cutting off their fins and throwing them back in to die a terrible death. So we don't want to support the shark fin industry at all. The second source of chondroitin is cow trachea. Cow trachea is banned in Europe because of the risk of mad cow disease. They send all their cow trachea to the United States for us suckers. So if it says it's from bovine, you don't want that chondroitin either. You want a chondroitin from chicken. Okay. So that you could try that. And then I think we also on our website, we sell a sodium hyaluronate from chicken. So it might be interesting to see if you could find out which ingredient's bothering you, Susan. Eveline, is there something I can ask my doctor for the constant urinary frequency urgency going every hour through the night? No. The far more important question is what's triggering your urinary frequency urgency. So let me explain this to you. So again, 3D model of the bladder. You've got a layer of mucus. You've got a layer of urothelial cells, and then you've got nerves and blood vessels. The bladder has 2 functional nerve groups. You've got the alpha afferent nerves, which control frequency urgency. Alpha afferent nerves are very easy to turn on because these are the nerves that tell you when you need to pee. Then you also have the C fibers. The C fibers, C as in cat. C fibers are the pain nerves. Pain nerves are hard to turn on. Normally takes some sort of trauma to turn on a pain nerve, like really massively over distending your bladder. That would turn on a pain nerve. So we know your frequency urgency is possibly being driven here. So the question is why? Concept number 1 is that there's something in your daily environment that is triggering these nerves, like caffeine. And so I would be looking at your food. I would really want to know what you're eating to make sure you're not doing something provocative that could irritate these nerves. Anything with caffeine, chocolate, anything like that. As well as obviously, if you're doing things that are high in acid, that acid is going to irritate this area, which is then going to trigger these nerves. So that constant frequency urgency, most often is going to be associated with this nerve getting turned on. But again, tight pelvic floor muscles might be part of the issue. It would be very interesting to see how you responded to using a heating pad, taking a hot shower before you go to bed. A muscle relaxant, that would be a very interesting experiment. I'd have your pelvic floor muscles assessed for sure. And then I talked earlier about fibroids. We know that fibroid tumors can push on the bladder and maybe trigger some symptoms too. Stephanie is saying, how do I feel about bladder distensions, vaginal Valium, bladder injections, over 10 meds? Hun, it begins about, we can't talk about it at all until we know your subtype. We could talk about treatments, for hours, but there will be no relevance to that discussion unless we know your subtype first. Allison, can you completely heal if you have Hunner's lesions? Yes, Hunner's lesions have been known to heal completely, especially after a Lyris treatment. And spontaneously, Hunner's lesions have disappeared. Hunner's lesions, again, for some people, they might be associated with a viral infection. We know that viruses get active and then they go latent. And so Hunner's lesions, and why Hunner's lesions happen is one of the great mysteries. There's two kind of theories right now. Theory number one is that it is a nerve that is profoundly inflamed. And when a nerve is irritated and inflamed, it releases a substance called substance P. And substance P is very damaging to tissue. Or concept number two, it could be a virus living on a nerve. The treatment is the same. If we silence the nerve, the lesion calms down, if not goes away. And so if we inject that nerve with if we inject that lesion with a steroid like triamcinolone, many research studies have found that to be very successful for lesions. The same is true with fulgurating it, laser therapy. And of course, Lyris is the end game because Lyris is the first treatment in history to heal Hunner's lesions in just 2 weeks. It's just not available right now. What would not be effective for Hunner's lesions, at least I don't really know any doctor who really believes this, would be something like DMSO or Elmeron or something like that. Lesions require lesion-specific therapy according to the American Urology Association. Mary says, my family doctor said they can't really diagnose IC without that. We now have a urine test that's being developed by Ken Peters' team at Beaumont, which can identify Hunner's lesions from urine sample. And the American Urology Association no longer recommends a hydrodistension with cystoscopy as a gold standard for diagnosing IC. It is a diagnosis of exclusion. The only time the hydrodistension is now used is if the diagnosis is in doubt, whereas in Europe, every single patient has a hydrodistension and a biopsy before they are diagnosed. In Europe, only patients with Hunner's lesions are diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. The rest of us are diagnosed with bladder pain syndrome. In the United States, our health insurance companies will not support that, and we don't believe in adding more trauma to the bladder. That's a very clear difference between Europe and America. In the American guidelines, their fundamental goal is to reduce patient trauma. They understand and respect that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, patients were absolutely traumatized having bladder treatments like DMSO and chlorpactin and silver nitrate. So if you read the AUA guidelines, it's all about being gentle to the patient and not traumatizing that patient so that patient will come back and be treated. A lot of patients walked away from their urologist because they were so traumatized by their treatment years ago. In Europe, it's different. In Europe, to make a diagnosis, it is a mandatory requirement that you have a hydrodistension with cystoscopy and biopsy, and their socialized medical system will pay for that. Lauren says she was diagnosed with a potassium sensitivity test in the office. That also is not recommended anymore because if you have a wounded bladder, this, or God forbid you have this, and you pour salt on it, it's going to hurt. So it was told Dr. Lowell Parsons, who invented the potassium sensitivity test 20 years ago. Very quick way to figure out if the bladder was generating pain. He did it for gynecologists so that they could differentiate between reproductive tract pain versus bladder pain. But it's very traumatic to the bladder. It's traumatic to the patient. You've got to put an anesthetic cocktail in afterwards to reduce the pain. So doctors prefer often to do what Dr. Moldwin suggests, which is an anesthetic cocktail. So instead of putting a salt in the bladder, let's put an anesthetic in the bladder like lidocaine. And if that turns off the pain, that is a de facto diagnosis that the bladder wall is the source of the pain, but it does not distinguish between Hunner's lesions versus bladder wall driven versus menopause driven, et cetera, et cetera. But at least it does tell us that the bladder wall is driving those symptoms. Catherine says the test nearly killed her. She's screaming. Yeah, exactly. That's why they don't do it. Lauren says smoking hurts your bladder. Yeah, it does, girl. Good luck. You get one drag at a time. So you gotta get yourself off of it, guys. Seriously, every single one of you, if you're smoking, you gotta stop. You have to stop. And really, why would you give to your money to a company that's profiting off of killing people? You should be so outraged at what they've done to the millions of people that they've condemned to die terrible deaths, all in the sake of making a buck. So I don't believe in giving my money to a tobacco company, and I also don't believe in giving my money to a soda company because they're just as bad. See, can I rant? I can rant. Kristen says, hydroxyzine 50 milligrams at night has helped so much with my bladder pain, but I worry about the risk of dementia. That is one of the antihistamines on the bad list. Are there any other antihistamines? Yeah, you can look at some of the over-the-counter antihistamines. Anticholinergic medications, and that would be amitriptyline. There's a whole class of medications that are anticholinergic medications, and unfortunately, both amitriptyline and hydroxyzine are anticholinergics. And what researchers had found is that if you use them in a high dosage for a long period of time, they can start triggering some cognitive decline. They first found that in seniors using them. So 10 years ago or so, there were warnings about if you were a senior citizen showing signs of cognitive decline, bad memory, not thinking well, let's go back, look at their medications, make sure you don't have them on multiple anticholinergics, as many have been. And the warning at that time was for those patients to go to their doctor and ask for non-anticholinergic medications. Shockingly, about 5 years ago, I think another study came out that looked at cognitive decline in younger patients in their 20s or 30s taking these meds. And they found they also were showing signs of cognitive decline. I don't remember it getting all the way to dementia, but it was certainly affecting their thinking process. And hydroxyzine, 50 milligrams at night, that's a lot. When I took hydroxyzine, I cut a 25 milligram capsule of Vistaril in half. So I was only taking 12.5 grams at night. And I did that for about 10 years. It was very, very helpful for my IC. It helped me sleep. It helped with anxiety. But I would never have gone up to 50. So the first thing you could do is just talk about reducing that dose. Why not try less? If you were taking hydroxyzine hydrochloride, also known as Atarax, the lowest dose I think is 5 milligrams. Yeah, I think it's a 5 milligram pill. It might be 10, but the thing is normally you can cut these in half. They're not time release anyway. So you can Google that, FDA alert, anticholinergic medications, cognitive decline, and you can find those FDA things on those. Michelle saying, with the sister products, aloe vera, do you use one or two or you take all together? No, you do not take all together. That would cost you a hell of a lot of money. There's no way to tell you which one might be effective for you. It is simply trial by error. I mean, is that the right word? It's trial. Yeah. Trial by error. Is that the right way? Okay. Anyway, just pick one and try it. If you're aloe intolerant, aloe, for some people causes some gut issues. So if you're an allo intolerant person, you should not do the allo, and you also cannot do the Cysto Renew. You'd have to try the Cysto Protect. Also, Cysto Protect, gut issues. Generally what I say to patients, because we are also freaking sensitive, is number one, talk to your doctor. Make sure your doctor's okay with you trying something. Then one capsule. Just do one capsule and wait 24 hours, 48 hours. See how you feel. If you feel okay, one capsule a day for a week. See how you feel. If that's okay, you can go up to 2 a day for a week. You can go up to, and you can work your way up to 4. The manufacturer's recommended 4 a day, or for allo 6 a day. I never got past 1. When I went to 2 a day for Cysto Protect, it gave me loose bowel. I do not like having loose bowel. So when I've taken Cysto Protect, I've taken 1 a day. And the cool thing about that is that means a bottle lasts 4 months. So I don't come from a more is better perspective. I come from a find the amount that works for you. If something is giving you side effects that is interfering with your quality of life, you need to tell your doctor about it, because it shouldn't be interfering with your quality of life. Catherine says, what do you think about Botox injections in the bladder? Botox has a place. It is a level 4, step 4 treatment option. It comes with significant risks. If they accidentally numb the nerve that controls your ability to pee, you will not be able to empty your bladder, and you will have to catheterize, self-catheterize for a couple of weeks to a couple of months until it wears off. Botox is not normally given to anybody who does not have the ability to self-catheterize. That's why they put it in step 4. We want you to go start at step 1, do everything in step 1 before you get at step 4. Okay. Stephanie said, your doctor never mentioned anything about subtypes. That's because the only people working with subtypes are at the national level. Most doctors around the United States, the local urologists, the regional urologists, they're not really up to date on the new subtyping proposals. But they should absolutely agree that, yes, a lesion patient is different than a bladder wall patient, that is different than a muscle patient, that is different from a central sensitization. They might not call it a subtype, but they're very clear and obvious divisions to the vast majority of urologists out there. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for your kind words. Yes, the hair is gone. I love it. No headaches anymore. I didn't realize how many headaches I was getting from having hair down to my waist. Angela says her bladder looks like a stop sign. So Angela, I would really want to know, did they have lesions? When you say stop sign, did it look like this? A big red area, dark red area? If it did, that means your bladder was bleeding a lot. So you have to ask our question, ask why. And I would suspect that perhaps you might have a lesion. Holy hell, you had 24 lesions? Holy mother of God. I have never in 25 years had anybody have more than 4 or 5 or 6 lesions. 24. Holy God. Oh, I'm so sorry, hon. Wow. Boy, I hope you participated in one of the Lyris clinical trials. You know, we recruited for them for years. It would have been, I mean, again, Lyris is the only treatment in history that has healed lesions. And I think fascinating to see biopsy results of those lesions. And I would even go so far as to do a next generation DNA test requesting a viral screen, which is a different test, just out of curiosity, because that's a hell of a lot of lesions. And I'm so sorry that you have had to deal with that. That I can't even imagine what that was like. I want to give you a big giant hug right now. And I completely believe you. Completely. Terry said she had Hunter's lesions with your original diagnosis in your 20s, but now you have pinpoints all over, but the pain is worse, much worse. But Terry, you're older now. And so menopause has to be playing a role. And I really have to wonder if you're showing signs of genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is making your bladder more vulnerable, which would explain why your bladder might be hurting more now. You know, yeah. Catherine on YouTube says she's a lesion patient. She says, is a hydrodistension not needed? Generally, so in the old days, they believed that the more you stretch the bladder, the better. They thought, you know, there are a bunch of reasons why a more was better approach. But now we know that that's very traumatic to the bladder. And so the AUA now recommends what we call a low pressure, short duration hydrodistension that does not traumatize the bladder wall, but in the same sense will still allow the doctor to get a good look in your bladder and treat any lesions. So if you're having lesions treated, generally they do have to do a hydro with cysto, but it's low pressure, short duration, not as traumatic. Oh, guys, our doctor database is working, but I haven't switched the link yet on our website. Please, somebody yell at me at the end of this meeting to go right into our form, right into our website and reactivate our doctor database. I forgot to do that. And I also have about 200 doctors that I've got to send letters to add to the list. Here, hold on one sec. Hi there. Hey, Jeff, I need just a couple more minutes. I'm almost done, okay? Okay. All right, guys, listen, we've been live for about 2 hours, 45 minutes. Holy hell, can I talk? Jillian says, you saw your urologist yesterday. They scheduled for a cystoscopy. Should you be worried? No. Yeah, a cystoscopy. You know, come to our website, learn the difference between a cystoscopy and a hydrodistension with cystoscopy. If you want to, give me a phone call. I'd be happy to walk you through it. Not a problem. All right, guys, listen, I need to do a coaching session. So I'm going to have to go. I've got somebody waiting for me. Thank you, Donna. So listen, number one, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I started this meeting talking about Valentine's Day. Remember, Valentine's Day is a celebration of the love that we have for everyone in our lives. So express that love. If kindness, cuddling, make it a happy family fun day. And if you're dealing with the intimacy issue, please watch the recording of this video, watch the first 20 minutes, and I talk about that too. I always end these meetings with the same thing. If there's one thing that you remember from this meeting, is that IC is not your fault. Here's a phone number, 800-928-7496. It's right on our website, ic-network.com. Okay. I'm looking at you. I'm taking my glasses off. I'm looking at you right now. Stop it. IC is not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. There is no shame. There is no blame because you have IC. You are hurt. You're no different than someone who got hit by a car. If a family member was hit by a car, you would be with them lying on the ground. You would be in the ambulance. You would be in the hospital. You would be bringing them home. You would be making them everything that they love. You would be loving on them in any way that you can because you know they are hurt. You deserve the same thing. You're hurt. I don't want you to hide it. Stop hiding it. If you need help, ask for it. And I hope you have somebody in your life who will love on you the way you deserve to be loved. You need somebody to hold your hand. You need somebody to make you laugh. You need somebody who can go to the doctor with you. If that's so important. What I don't want you to do is stay online all day. Get out of the freaking groups. You can come online for 15 minutes a day. Or actually, I don't want to sabotage myself. You can come watch a support group meeting. But if you're suffering and in pain, please don't stay in a support group and read sad things. Turn off the computer. Call somebody. Ask for help. Get somebody to distract you. Open the front door. Walk outside. Get in the sunshine. Do things that will nurture you. Being online will not necessarily nurture you. Every day, I need you to do 3 things. For 15 minutes, do something that gives you comfort for your soul and your spirit. I don't care what it is. Go to church. Hug a redwood tree. Take a walk. But do something that will give you comfort. For me, I listen to Joel Osteen in the car. And about 80% of what he says resonates with me. I ignore the other part, but he tells you to carry hope in your heart. And believe me, that's what I do. Okay? 15 minutes for your spirit. Do 15 minutes for your bladder. Or your pelvis, whether it's your pelvic floor physical exercises, which I have not done today. I have not done them in 3 days. I am bad. I have to go do them. I'll do them tonight. Or if you're driving by and you get tempted by Starbucks, just keep driving by. Make a commitment to do something that you know will help the healing of your bladder and the healing of your muscles. And then I need you to do 15 minutes for your noggin, for your brain here, because seriously, education is power. The more you know, the more you can make your case with doctors. No one could ever tell me IC is in my head. I will slam them down with research studies. I will slam them down and educate them with a MAP research network, the multidisciplinary approach to the study of pelvic pain. Dear sir, did you know that the National Institutes of Health has funded for the last decade a research arm dedicated to understanding pelvic pain? And did you know in those research studies, they have found A, B, C, D. It is not in my head. And I need you to learn about it. Because this is not me making it up. This is your own government has dedicated millions of dollars for IC. They're the ones who found candida in the urine of IC patients. So they're the ones who have helped us understand sensitivity. They're the ones who have helped us understand PTSD and other things like that. So seriously, people, the more you know, the better you're going to be able to argue your case. So I want you to read 1 article a day, just 1. Come to our website, the IC Network. Read a freaking blog, would you? Just 1. You can read the blog on Valentines Day or read the blog on fluoroquinolone toxicity. Let's get your knowledge level up there. The last thing I want you to do is let a family member who has a bladder infection take Cipro. You know better than that now. We're educating you about the dangers of that. I don't want a family member to get an aortic aneurysm from taking Cipro for a simple UTI that the that the Food and Drug Administration has said should not be used anymore. You can save a life if you educate yourself. So I really need you to do that. Okay. All right. I get off my soapbox. Our next meeting is this Sunday, 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern time. Be prepared. Go over to Twitch TV. That's where we're going to be doing a lot of broadcasts in the future because I won't have to use these slides anymore. I'll just be using PowerPoint. I've got the new computer that's getting ready to be set up so that we'll be able to do that. And that's very exciting because for 2019, my goal is all online stuff like this. And I'm really excited about it. But I got to do my work too. I got to read all the new research studies because I can't educate you unless I do that work too. So, all right, my friends, I will see you. Well, have a wonderful Valentine's Day and we'll see you on Sunday. All right. Be well. Goodbye, Facebook. Facebook is now done. YouTube. Last shot on YouTube. Heidi, you have our number. 800-925-7496. Feel free to call. Not today. I'm going to be busy today, but feel free to call tomorrow, the next day. The entire week's open. I'm just working on the magazine. So, all right. All right, my friends. Be well on YouTube. Ending stream now.